Seattle mornings arrive quietly, a slow, gray light pushing through low clouds, rain tapping the windows of Pike Street like a patient visitor who never quite leaves. In a small coffee shop called Anchor Grounds, tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner, the day begins before the city does. Zoe had worked behind the espresso bar at Anchor Grounds for 8 years. She was 31, had paint-stained sneakers she never seemed to replace, and a memory for people that most folks reserved for phone numbers or grocery lists. She remembered faces, habits, moods, and above all, she remembered orders. Adam first walked into Anchor Grounds on a Tuesday in November, 6 years ago. He was wearing a navy coat that was a size too big, carrying a leather messenger bag worn thin at the strap, and he looked like a man who had recently been through something he hadn't quite named yet. He studied the chalkboard menu for a long time before ordering. "Medium drip coffee," he said quietly. "2 sugars. And if you have it, just a little oat milk. Not too much." He paused, almost apologetically. "My wife used to make it that way." He said it the way people say things they haven't meant to say out loud, and then he looked down at the counter as if the words had embarrassed him. Zoe made the coffee exactly as he described. She didn't ask about the wife. She just slid the cup across the counter with a small nod and said, "Enjoy." He sat by the window for 40 minutes, watching the rain, and then he left. But he came back the next morning. And the morning after that. By the second week, Zoe had begun preparing his order the moment she saw him push through the glass door. She didn't ask him to confirm it. She didn't make a show of it. She simply had the cup waiting by the time he reached the register. The first time it happened, Adam stopped mid-reach for his wallet and looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, somewhere between gratitude and something much older and heavier. The seasons turned. Adam came in 5 mornings a week, sometimes 6. In summer, he wore linen shirts. In winter, that same navy coat, now even more worn at the cuffs. He read physical newspapers when almost no one else did anymore, folding them in half the way older men fold newspapers, with practiced, deliberate creases. They exchanged small talk, the weather, a road closure on Pine Street, whether the Mariners had any hope that season. Zoe learned, slowly and in pieces, that Adam was an architect. That he had a daughter in Portland he saw on holidays. That he had moved to Seattle after his wife, Clara, passed away from a long illness 3 years before he first walked through Anchor's door. He mentioned Clara the way people mention a country they can never return to, with reverence, and with a quiet, permanent ache. Years passed the way they do, steadily, unremarkably, and then all at once when you look back. Zoe got a promotion, then lost it when the shop changed owners, then got it back. She moved apartments twice. She started taking night classes in graphic design, then stopped. But every weekday morning, Adam's order was ready. 2 sugars. A little oat milk. Not too much. Then, on a Monday in March, Adam didn't come in. Zoe set the cup aside and thought nothing of it. People had off days, appointments, bad mornings. But Tuesday passed without him. Wednesday. Thursday. By Friday, she caught herself glancing at the door every time it opened, and each time it wasn't him, she felt a small, unexplained tug of worry she couldn't quite justify. A week became 2. 2 became a month. Zoe asked a few of the other regulars, the woman who always got the lavender latte, the older gentleman who came in for tea, but no one knew Adam beyond his face and his newspaper. She didn't have a last name. She didn't have a number. She had nothing except a coffee order and 6 years of quiet Tuesday through Saturday mornings. Zoe found herself thinking about him on the bus ride home, in the particular way you think about someone when you're not sure if you're worried or just lonely on their behalf. She wondered if he was sick. If he had moved. If his daughter in Portland had called him south. She wondered if he even knew that someone had noticed he was gone. 3 months after he disappeared, Adam walked back through the door on a rainy Wednesday morning. He looked thinner. There were new lines around his eyes, and he moved with the careful deliberateness of someone who had recently been unwell. Zoe saw him through the crowd before he reached the counter, and without thinking, she turned and began making his order. When he reached her, she slid the cup across the counter exactly as she always had. He looked down at it. Then he looked up at her. His eyes were wet, not crying, not yet, but that particular glassiness that comes just before. "You remembered," he said. And there was something in the way he said it that made it clear he was not simply talking about coffee. He told her, haltingly, what had happened. He'd had a cardiac event in March, not a full heart attack, but close enough that he'd spent 2 weeks in the hospital and another month in his apartment under doctor's orders, unable to do much more than sit and watch the city from his window. His daughter had come up from Portland, which was good. But the loneliness of those weeks, he said, was unlike anything he'd experienced since the first year after Clara died. "I thought about this place," he said, wrapping both hands around the warm cup. "I thought about walking in and having you just know. Without me having to say anything. Without me having to explain what I wanted or who I was." He paused, steadying his voice. "When you've been very alone for a very long time, that's not a small thing. That's one of the biggest things there is." Zoe didn't have words for a moment. She'd spent years doing something she'd thought of as almost automatic muscle memory, professional habit. She had never stopped to consider that for him, it was a thread connecting him to a world that still knew he existed. A world that had kept a small, warm place for him even on the mornings he wasn't there to fill it. Adam came back every morning after that, right up until the following spring, when he finally retired and moved to Portland to be near his daughter. On his last day, he left a card on the counter. Inside, in careful architect's handwriting, it said, "You gave me somewhere to belong when I had forgotten how to belong anywhere." Don't ever underestimate what it means to simply remember someone. Zoe kept the card tucked beside the espresso machine, where she could read it every morning and where it reminded her, every single day, that small kindnesses are almost never as small as they seem.